many games will your favorite NFL team win in 2025? Welcome, football fans, to the video where I give you a simple one-word answer. Over or under? That's right. The NFL win totals have been released for all 32 NFL teams, and I'm going to analyze each of the 32 NFL teams and give you the answer you're seeking. Over or under? If that sounds good, spike the like button, and don't forget, don't be a jabroni. Subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more NFL analysis like nowhere else on the internet. Let me know in the comments if you agree with the win total, you think it's accurate. Let me know if they're too high on your favorite team or too low. And if you want to provide some picks for your favorite bets with these win totals, also let me know. I'd love to see those in the comment section below. If we do get 100 likes on this video, I'll come out with my favorite bets for the win totals this season. This is my early pick for all 32 NFL teams. How we're going to go about this is we're going to begin at the bottom of the league, the bottom of the NFL, the lowest projected win total. And we're going to work our way up to the most wins that are projected for the NFL in 2025. Basically, essentially, a power ranking video from the worst to the best. Win total style. So let's begin with the worst team in the NFL and the only team projected 4.5 wins or less. Of course, it's the Cleveland Browns. They're back at the bottom. The Brownies. They're back. Now, the thing is, Cleveland does arguably have the worst quarterback situation in football, and I only put arguably in front of it because the Pittsburgh Steelers do exist. But Kenny Pickett is pretty bad. We do know that. And Kenny Pickett is not going to be winning many games as a starter. That being said, they do have the second pick. Shedeur Sanders could be the pick at number 2. So he might be the starter as well. We'll throw that into the mix. They did retain Myles Garrett. They do have a stifling defense on paper. They have a very good front seven, led by a solid pass rush and a good cornerback group defensively. They also have an offense that I would argue well coached. Kevin Stefanski knows how to coach the quarterback. Kevin Stefanski gets the most out of the quarterback. So that, to me, gives me hope that 4.5 might be too low. Just because we've seen Stefanski, with every quarterback not named Deshaun Watson, win more than 4.5 games. Baker Mayfield, Joe Flacco. Last year, he would have won way more than 4.5 if he just started Jameis from beginning to end, right? So you consider Stefanski's track record. You consider Jim Schwartz. You consider some of the pieces on this team, Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy had a great year last year. This is a solid offensive line. 4.5 does feel low. If I had to lean either way, despite the uncertainty at quarterback, I think I'd still lean over. I think. It's a tough one. But given Stefanski's track record, I'm going to go with the over. Trusting the coaching here. Next. Now, the next group of teams are 5.5 wins projected or less. The Tennessee Titans, I would lean under. And the reason for that is I think Cam Ward will be the quarterback. And I like Cam Ward, but he'll be a rookie. Supported by a fine offense. Nothing special. Fine. Right? I'm leaning under because of the inexperience at head coach, the lack of faith in their coaching staff as a whole. The defense, to me, is not great on paper. They don't have a great pass rush. I do like their interior duo of Simmons and Sweat. I do think Snead can bounce back. I think that the offense with Pollard and Spears might be able to run the ball a bit better with a better offensive line in front of them. But I'm just not sold on this team winning more than 5.5. Like, they'd have to win 6 or 7 games. Even in a weak division, I'm not sold that with this coach and a rookie quarterback, that's exactly the duo I want to bet on. So I'm going to go under for the Tennessee Titans. Also, under 5.5 for the New York Jets. The Jets, I think, could be the worst team in football. I don't love Aaron Glenn, and I don't love Justin Fields. And it comes down to that. They have a huge hole at right tackle right now. And if they do solve that with a draft pick, they have huge holes at wide receiver and tight end. I think their defense is probably not going to be as superb because they're switching schemes. And I do think that will have an influence. They also have lost some big pieces, some big vets on this defense, including DJ Reed, CJ Mosley. I look at the Jets and I think they've got some talent on defense. They have Garrett Wilson, they have Breece Hall, and maybe they can add a very promising right tackle to their young left tackle, or maybe they add a Warren at tight end to really get us excited. But with Justin Fields, I just don't see, if you look at his record, right, he's going to be their starter in 2025. If you were to average his win percentage out throughout a course of a season, he's not coming close to 6 wins per year. And it's really a guy that just doesn't win a lot of games. So I'm going under 5.5 for the New York Jets. Pretty simple. The New York Giants. I like the way that the Giants have improved. I like their defense a lot more with Holland and Adebo. I think that Dexter Lawrence is one of the best in the NFL defensively. Brian Burns is a great complementary piece. And I look at the offense, and I do love some of their young pieces, like Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy. I think Brian Daboll is a respectable coach. Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston are upgrades over what they had last year. And I think it brings professionalism and a floor to the quarterback position the Giants have not had in recent seasons. That being said, they're clearly the 4th team in their division right now. Maybe they could compete for 3rd with the Cowboys, but that's a maybe. The NFC has a lot of depth. And it's hard for me to imagine that the Giants are going to win like 8 or 9 games. So really, if I'm guessing that they're going to go over, I'm assuming 6 or 7. Just barely getting over. So this one's tough because I do really like what the Giants have done. They have an entire coaching staff to count on here because it's a career season for them. It's make or break. Their whole front office, make or break. The draft class, maybe they get Travis Hunter. Right? That would be pretty interesting. That might add quite a bit to this team. So I want, out of faith, for the Big Blue to go over. Like, I think they'll win like 6 or 7. Especially if they start, Russ early, could get them a couple wins due to his veteran savvy. And then later in the year, you never know, Jameis could pull some things out too. So I'm going to say they win like 6 games. So I'm going to go over just barely. Next, we have the New Orleans Saints, also projected 5.5 wins. The Saints are difficult because with Derek Carr, I do believe just on the surface you want to lean towards the over. Because if you were to compare Derek Carr to all the other quarterbacks like we've already discussed, could Cam Ward be better? Yeah, maybe. Could Russell Wilson be better? Potentially, but I don't think so. Like, the Saints at least have Derek Carr. At the same time, they have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara. Now they have Brandon Cooks. I think their D-line is fine, but they have an entirely new coaching staff. It feels like the bottom has not fallen out of this team yet, and it feels like it's eventually going to take place. Their O-line is still sort of shaky. It was one of the worst in the NFL last year. Their pass rush is not exquisite. Their secondary sucks. Like, it's the worst Saints secondary I've seen in a minute, especially at corner. They've got more holes on this roster than I believe they did the last couple of years. I'm going to lean under, but this one hurts because I feel like this is a very winnable division. This is a very, competable division, if that makes sense. You can compete in this division is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to go under just because I think the Saints are going to be one of the worst teams in the league, and I don't love the makeup of their roster, and I don't love that for a young staff, but it's a tough one to say under to. The Las Vegas Raiders are the final team sitting at 5.5 wins, and I would lean over. I like the coaching staff, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly. I love Geno Smith. I think he's highly underrated. I think their offensive line in general is underrated. I think they will be able to add a high potential draft pick at wide receiver or running back, which could really help their offensive production. They have in his prime and getting there, Brock Bowers. Jacoby Myers is highly underrated as well to make plays. I think defensively, they have Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins manning their defensive front, which is also an underrated unit with Malcolm Kuntz there as well. So yes, they don't have the most ideal linebacker position, safety position, or corner position. They're a little bit underwhelming right now at wide receiver and running back. But I think with that coaching staff, the will to win that I feel like this culture will have immediately under Pete Carroll because he wants to win. He's an old man. He doesn't have many years left. And Geno Smith, I think, can get this team to at least 6. So I'm going to go over 5.5 for the Las Vegas Raiders, despite that division and them clearly being the least talented team in that tough AFC West. Next, we're going to advance to the teams with 6.5 projected wins. Jacksonville. Jacksonville is tricky because their roster is not very good on the surface. But what they do have going for them is a quarterback that's been to the playoffs before in Trevor Lawrence and a coach that I really like in Liam Cohen. And I think Liam Cohen can get the most out of Trevor Lawrence. So if I do believe that, that has me leaning over. But let's talk through it. Their receiving core right now is pretty much Brian Thomas Jr. or bust. De'Ami Brown, I like, but I'm not willing to count on him consistently. They let go of Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. Their offensive line is pretty shaky. Even the younger guys that they're trying to count on have not been great in the NFL, so they're going to have to improve due to the coaching. Their run game was bad last year, for the most part. Their defense was awful last year, for the most part. They might be able to add like a Mason Graham, but is that really a difference maker? I'm not sure. They have holes at corner. They have holes in D-tackle. Honestly, when you really think about it, Jacksonville is just not that good of a roster. They're rather thin. They don't have a lot of talent. And I don't really know if they're elite in any way, shape, or form in any spot. So that has me concerned. But again, it's a quarterback coach league. And with Lawrence and Cohen, I believe they can sneak over this number. I'm skeptical. So I'm going to lean over because it's the AFC South. Somebody's got to be there and competing with the Texans. So I'm going to say they win around 7. Not because they're a talented team, but because I think they'll be well coached on offense, and I think their quarterback will have a bit of a bounce back season because of it. Next, the Indianapolis Colts, 6.5 wins. I would actually go under. Now, maybe that's hating, and maybe I'm wrong. And I'm going to be wrong on Indy or Jacksonville. I mean, I'm going to be wrong on one of these, right? But I'm not a fan of Anthony Richardson. And this feels like the year that the Colts are going to have to force Anthony Richardson on the field. Because if they don't, and he doesn't work out, it's Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones is just not winning a lot of football games, okay? The offensive line is still pretty good. Jonathan Taylor is still pretty good. I like their receivers. I think it's probably the most underrated unit in football. Their D-line is pretty darn solid across the board. I like the addition of big game Lou Anarumo to the defensive coordinator, Charvarius Ward, Bynum at safety. I think the Colts roster is talented. I think they're good at the line of scrimmage. I just don't think they have a quarterback. Like, I think their quarterback's going to let them down. I think they win 6 games exactly. So I would lean slightly towards the under, but Shane Steichen has been better than this in his first 2 years, right? And that's what scares me. Maybe I'm wrong, right? That's what scares me. This could be the year that Shane Steichen could be let go as well, or this could just be the year they're completely gone from Anthony Richardson. Like, it's going to be one or the other, right? Because the last 2 years, they won 8 games somehow last year. I have no idea how. And the year before, they won 9, I think. So, or maybe they won 8, but regardless, they won 8 or more under Shane Steichen in his first 2 years. So that has me a little shaky, especially in this division. But you just can't keep winning with this quarterback play. The final team with 6.5 wins projected for 2025 is Carolina. Carolina with Bryce Young, I think they'll go over. I actually think right now I have Carolina as the number 2 team in this division. So if that's the case, I think they'll win 7 or 8 games. I like their offensive line a lot. I think it's one of the most underrated units in the NFL. I think that one of Leggett or Coker can step up and develop. I think Thielen can still ball. And I do think with Hubbard and Dowdle, they'll have a strong running game. I like Canales' vibe. I'm buying Bryce Young in year 3. And I think their defense did improve this offseason. And I think with this draft, they'll improve even more. So I just like the direction the Panthers are headed in. And I feel like out of all the other teams in their division, the Saints feel like they're just barely struggling to hold on. The Falcons are confused. Carolina, I think, could be a small breakout this year. So I'll say over 6.5. Now to the teams with 7.5 projected wins. The Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to go under. Now, this is tough too, because the Falcons, I think, won 8 games last year, if I'm not mistaken. They could easily win 7 or 8 again and be slightly surprising, but I think it's probably going to be more likely 7. I'm not the biggest Michael Penix guy, but I do see the talent. I will say that. I like their offense. I don't love their offense. I think if anything, it got a little worse losing Drew Dahlman. I don't like their coach. I think Raheem Morris is the worst coach in the league, so that matters to me. And so you have arguably the worst coach-quarterback combination in the entire sport. Maybe other than the Jets, right? Like, Penix, unless he blows me away, he is basically essentially a rookie combined with Raheem Morris. That's not a good combination. On top of that, the defense, maybe they're a little bit better. They can't get much worse than last year, but they don't have a lot of talent. Their pass rush still suffers. Leonard Floyd is not a number 1 edge guy. They need to draft one for certain, for sure. I haven't loved their offseason. I still think they're a bottom 10 defense, even post-draft. And I think their offense will be inconsistent due to young quarterback play. So I look at the Falcons, I'm like 6-7 wins feels about right. I think Carolina will be the better team. The New England Patriots, 7.5. You guys know I'm going over. Obviously, I think this is a smash. I think this is a bet. 7.5 feels too low for a Mike Vrabel-led football team with arguably, not even really arguable, the most talented quarterback, not even saying the best, but the most talented quarterback that Mike Vrabel has ever coached. That, I think, is undisputable. So you have Drake May and Mike Vrabel, probably the rising coach-quarterback combination in the AFC and the NFL. You have a vastly improved defense with names like Milton Williams and Harold Landry and Robert Spillane and Carlton Davis. And this defense could get back to top 10 form. You're going to have professional level coaching with Josh McDaniels added to the fold offensively. The last time the Patriots had a respectable offense, he was calling the offense, right? Now you add Stephon Diggs, a real NFL receiver, to make everybody else fall in line, like Pop Douglas, Hunter Henry, and Ramondre Stevenson as complementary pieces. They could still add in the draft to the offensive line to help Drake May or wide receiver to help Drake May. They could even land a high-end prospect like Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, whoever falls to them. So I think the Patriots are absolute cash money to go over 7.5 because I think Drake May is going to be a stud this year, and I think their defense is going to turn it around. So Mike Vrabel gets this team back on track. They're definitely going over 7.5, at least winning 8 games. Now, let's get to the 8.5 combination and conversation, I should say, where we've got a combination of teams. The Seattle Seahawks kick it off. I'm leaning over. Seattle has a weak schedule. I don't love their offseason, but I understand it. I feel like Sam Darnold for Geno Smith is a fairly equal trade. I'm concerned about the protection for Sam Darnold, but I like the system for him. I think under Kubiak, he will have success similar to what he did with O'Connell. I like Kenneth Walker. I like their run game. I think Kubiak will lean on that. I like Jackson Smith and Jigba a ton. I think Cooper Kupp will be a nice complementary piece, and even MVS will stand out at times. Defensively, I think they'll be a top 10 defense. So you combine a pretty balanced offense that maybe is not electric, but very solid, with a top 10 defense and a really good defensive coach against a weak schedule where they have, I know that last year it wasn't the best, but typically a home field that's pretty tough. I like the Seahawks to go to 9 or 10 wins this year. 8, maybe they just go under, but I'm going to lean towards 9 again. They're the 9-win team in the NFL. Pittsburgh Steelers at 8.5. Now, typically they do win more than 8.5 because Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season, but who is his quarterback? So if I'm playing the projection game right now, and I'm saying it's Aaron Rodgers, I would go over. If I'm thinking it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers and basically anyone else, I'm going to go under. So my answer basically comes down to like, do I think Aaron Rodgers will be starting for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And like in my heart of hearts, my inclination is no. Honestly, I want it to happen, but something is telling me it's not going to happen. So I'm going to say the Steelers go under 8.5. I like their defense a lot. I love their 2 wide receivers, big, nasty individuals, fast, explosive. I like Tomlin and Arthur Smith. I know what the Steelers have done consistently going over 8.5. I know Mike Tomlin never has a losing season. But with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson in your division, if you're starting Mason Rudolph or Jackson Dart, you're not winning 9 games. I do not care. So I'm going under for the Steelers here. The Minnesota Vikings, I'm going over 8.5. J.J. McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers, or whoever's their quarterback, I think it will be J.J. McCarthy, will win enough games to make the playoffs, I think. I think they'll win 10 or 11 games in that range this year. Maybe slightly down from last year's regular season, which is to be expected, but still enough to make the playoffs. They will have a top 5 defense after adding Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave to an already really good front 7, with Dallas Turner entering year 2, Andrew Van Ginkel being the stud that he is, and Jonathan Grenard. And then you've got Flores and his scheme. And then you have the offense, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones. They add Jordan Mason, one of the better offensive lines on paper in the NFL entering this season, with Ryan Kelly and Will Fries being added. So I look at J.J. McCarthy being very well insulated, having a great play caller, being able to lean on 2 running backs, having good protection, great weaponry, and a very good defense. It doesn't get much better. It's almost like he's playing at Michigan. So I'm going to go over 8.5 for the Vikings. I think they make the playoffs again. The Miami Dolphins, I would lean under. This is not confident, but I would lean under. I don't think that their offensive line will sustain throughout the season. They probably will start relatively well, as they always do, given the warm weather and the climate, and then they'll fade down the stretch because Tua will get hurt. The offensive line will get hurt. Their secondary's thin. Maybe they have injuries there. They do have some older players floating around the roster. And then also, you've got Mike McDaniel lurking on the hot seat. And I think the offensive line is going to dwindle with Teron Armstead at left tackle. That is very concerning. So I think Miami, on paper, sound like a team that will win 9 or 10 games. But they're a little bit weaker from a roster perspective than they were last year and maybe even the year previous. And if you combine that with the fact that they're constantly injured, they constantly play poorly in bad weather, they can't be counted on in December, January, I think that they are a team that wins like 8 games this year. So I'm going to go Miami under. Next, the Dallas Cowboys, 8.5, I would lean under. Dak, I think this is going to be a proclamation. I think Dak is going to start to slide as a player. I think coming back from this injury, he is not going to be quite the same Dak that we saw 2 years ago at an MVP caliber clip. I think he's going to start to fall. The offensive line is not nearly as good as it was really ever. Like, Dak has had a better offensive line than this unit on paper in every year of his career, pretty much. CeeDee Lamb and no one else at wide receiver. We'll see what they do in the draft. Running back is absolutely butt naked. They have no dimension to their offense. It's all passing game. They have a new coach in Schottenheimer who will be under much scrutiny because the fan base did not like the hire to begin with. And I honestly believe that it will be a little bit disjointed, and I think Jerry Jones will have a lot to say about it. I think defensively, they will be decent against the pass. They'll probably force some turnovers and get some sacks, but I think they'll be very, very inconsistent because I still think they lack some size. They lack run game support. And I just think they're a much thinner roster, which far less depth than they've had in recent years. So I think the Cowboys go under. Next, the Chicago Bears are also sitting at 8.5. We have 2 more, the Bears and the next team at 8.5. I'm going to go under 8.5 for the Chicago Bears. Under or over? You know what? Hold on. Let me think. I'm actually going to go over. Hurts, man. I don't know. The NFC North is so hard. The Bears' schedule is so difficult. They have to play the Vikings twice, the Packers twice, the Lions twice. They play tough teams, bro. So it's really hard. I could see the Bears like ascending and getting better and winning 8 games and they just go under. I could also see them ascending, getting better, winning 9 or 10 games and maybe making the playoffs even. So this is a really tough conversation. I want to believe in the Bears. I want to believe in Ben Johnson. I want to think Caleb will get better. I do think really everything is on Caleb because the offensive line is a lot better. They have DJ Moore. They have Rome Odunze. They're going to have an entire draft to improve, whether it be running back, whether it be defensive line. Their defense is already very solid. They brought in Dennis Allen. I'm going to say over because maybe they win 9 and they still miss the playoffs. So I'm going to go over Chicago. I have belief in Ben Johnson. I have belief in what they've done this offseason to give them and provide them that boost over the win total of 8.5. And the final team sitting at 8.5 is the Arizona Cardinals. This is tough. I think they'll land around where they were at last year, which is about 8 and 9. So I'm going to go under just slightly. I do think they've gotten better on paper, but I do think the Niners will probably be better this year just because they'll be healthier pretty much. I think Seattle might be a little bit better this year, but it's not really about the division. The Rams also probably will be more consistent this year. But I do feel like it's just tough like in that division. It's tough in that NFC. And it is an easy schedule. I will say that. But Kyler is a roller coaster up and down. Maybe with that schedule they'll go over. See, this is really hard. But how many teams in this division are going to go over? So, yeah, I think I see the Cardinals last in their division, so I have to go under. I think they'll probably win like 7 or 8 games in that range. 7 or 8. Kyler's inconsistent. They're my least favorite coaching staff in the division. The O-line still has some holes in the interior, in my opinion. The defense is still very shaky besides the moves that they've made, with Sweat and Dalvin Tomlinson. And I think they're lacking talent. So I'm going to go under 8.5. Now, to the 9.5 football teams, you've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to go over, I think, just barely. I think they'll win 10. Somebody's got to win this division. And if the Bucs are going to win this division, it's more likely to happen at 10 than 9. Although 9 is a real possibility. No Liam Cohen, which also sucks. but they have the best quarterback in this division. They have one of the best receiver trios in football with Chris Godwin returning with McMillan and Evans. They've got a very well chemistry-filled offensive line with one of the best left tackles in football, an ascending center, Bucky Irving in the backfield, a defense that should get a lot better this year due to the draft, the addition of Hassan Reddick, the health of guys like Antoine Winfield. This could be Levante David's last ride. They're going to make it count. I think the Bucs make the playoffs, win 10 or 11 games, so I'm going to go over there. Next, we've got the Houston Texans at 9.5. I would go over. I think they'll win 10 or 11 because I think they'll win their division. I don't love their offensive line, but pretty much every other area of this team I love. I think they have one of, if not the best defense in football after some of the additions they've made this offseason, including CJ Gardner-Johnson to their biggest hole in their safety spot. I think they have one of the best pass rushes in football. I think they have the best coach in their division. I think they have the best quarterback in their division. I think Nico Collins is a top 5 wide receiver. Christian Kirk's a very good number 2. Tank Dell will return. Joe Mixon is very, very good at football. So I look at them and I'm like, the O-line, if it's even a little bit better than last year, it was horrendous, downright horrific last year. If the offensive line is a little bit better, they could win like 12 games, and I wouldn't be that surprised. But at the same time, I think even if it's bad, they just showcase they could win 10-ish type of games, make the playoffs, win their division against bad opponents inside the division. So I'm going to take the Texans to go over. This is one that I really like. The Green Bay Packers at 9.5, I'm going to go under and say they win 9. I'm not going to doubt Matt LaFleur to get a winning season out of this team, but I think this is probably the bottom team in their division this year, maybe third place. I think they'll be fighting with the Bears, but the O-line's good. Jordan Love is decent, a little inconsistent, a little incoherent at times with his decision-making, but has high-octane playability. Defensively, they were good against the run last year, horrific against the pass. Will that stay the same? Will they improve? Will they decline? I just think the division will have a lot to do with it. The schedule will have a lot to do with it. A lack of great receiver will have something to do with it. I think they've hit a wall. They might make the playoffs just barely like they did last year, but I don't see it this year. I think they're actually taking a step back. The Denver Broncos also sitting at 9.5. They are the second final team at 9.5. Denver, I think, will go over, but I'm not certain. I think it could be 9. I think it could be 10, but I think it's going to be either one. Now, most of me believes Bo Nix will only get better. He was an older quarterback coming into the NFL. He did have plenty of reps and plenty of games. So you do wonder if that's still going to be the case. But I thought he clicked extremely well with Sean Payton last year, especially at the end of the year. And he seemed to be ascending his game down the stretch. I think that will lead into next season. Now, tape will come to, be studied this offseason about the Broncos offense, and can defenses catch up to him? That will be a question he has to answer. But the O-line is very good. Cortland Sutton is very good. They have a number of complementary weapons now, including Evan Ingram. They're going to have another draft here to stock up. They've got an elite defense, adding Dre Greenlaw and Hufanga to Zach Allen, Nick Bonito, Pat Surtain, and the boys. So I look at Denver as a very complete roster with 2 very good coaches in Sean Payton and Vance Joseph. And I think they win 10 games as a wild card team. Now, the Washington Commanders. Hold on, not the Washington Commanders. Did I miss a team? There they are. The Los Angeles Rams. We will get to the Commanders, guys. I had the Rams out of order because I can't even believe it myself, to be honest. The Rams are sitting at 9.5 wins for the season. I think the Rams will go over this number. I'm going to double check that because I thought that they were... See, I can't even believe this, guys. I'm going to double check in the middle of a video. Were they at 10.5 or were they at 9.5? That is the question. And guys, if you haven't already, make sure to Gronk spike the like button, man. And don't be a jabroni and subscribe to the Bottom Line View. All right? My internet is slow. I don't know why it's not working. So we're just going to keep going. But I'm pretty sure they're at 9.5. So we'll go with that for now. I think, I can't even believe it. So obviously, I think they should go over here. I think this is an over 100%. As long as they stay healthy, right? Puka Nacua and Matt Stafford have a tendency to get injured. So there is that. And potentially that's what's baked in here a little bit. Also, the Rams did get hurt at the beginning of last year, which really cost them some games. That was costly. But at the end of the day, you've got Stafford, you've got McVay. It's quite possibly the best coach-quarterback combination in the NFC, period. When you have that, I'm picking you to make the playoffs. So, yeah, they should win at least 10. Even if they don't win their division, I think they'll win 10. I like the young ascending defense, especially in the front seven. I think this is a really underrated offensive line. I love the addition of Devontae Adams to complement Puka Nacua. I think that they are going to be the best team in their division as of right now, and that's why I have them over 9.5. I couldn't even believe it. I had to try to look it up, and unfortunately couldn't fully look it up for you guys. All right, next, we're going to get to the 10.5 win total teams. The Washington Commanders now can be discussed. The Commanders are tough because I kind of think that everything about the Commanders on paper suggests that they'll go under this number. But I think if they do go under, it will be 9 or 10. I'm going to go under. And the reason I'm going to go under, I'm worried about Cliff Kingsbury in year 2 and how defenses might be able to study him and Jaden Daniels. And if they can get a beat on either the scheme or the quarterback. I am a little worried about a sophomore slump for the quarterback because if that happens, the team is going to be far worse. Because I've never seen a quarterback carry a team as a rookie as much as Jaden Daniels did. So that is concerning because the defense is bad on paper. It got worse this offseason, arguably. I like Laramie Tunzel. I don't love the Debo pickup. I think it will help. I think it's great for Debo, but I'm uncertain that it will be some influential, just absolutely lights out move that they made. I just don't know if Debo is the same player anymore. And I could just see a team that won 9 one-score games not being able to replicate their fourth quarter magic. Winning games via Hail Mary is just not what happens in the NFL. And you get a little unlucky. So I think they'll win 10. So I'm going to go under 10.5 at 10 wins. The San Francisco 49ers are at 10.5. And as much as I would like to say over, this is a weird number for them. Because most people think the Niners are not going to be good this year. So I wonder where Vegas is going with this. Now, obviously, they have the easiest schedule in the league. And that's probably a big portion of this. It's really easy. It's like one of the easiest schedules I've ever seen on paper entering a season. And they do have Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh on defense, Brock Purdy at quarterback, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, right? Christian McCaffrey is back. So could they win 11 or 12 games? It wouldn't be shocking. But I'm going to say they win 10, maybe 9. And I think they get in the playoffs as like the 7 seed with 10 wins. Because right now, their defensive line is bleak. It's thin. Their team is thinning out, right? They're getting younger on purpose. So I think 10 sounds about right because they'll get there due to the great offense. If Purdy is as good as people think, they'll win about 9 or 10. And then you combine that with the great coaching they have, which is going to be one of the best combos in the NFC as well. So I think the Niners will win 10. They might win 11 if they really hit the draft well. But that's accounting for a lot. I mean, they have lost a lot of talented players. So I'm going to go with under for the Niners. The LA Chargers, I'm also going to lean under. So this is 3 unders in this 10.5 section, which is interesting. I'm going to lean under because I still don't love their weapons outside of Ladd McConkey. I like their offensive line. I'm not sold Najee Harris is going to be this absolute demon of a running back that maybe Jim Harbaugh believes. I do think the offensive line got a lot better, which is going to help Justin Herbert and help their running game. I am not a Greg Roman fan either. And I look at their defense and I'm not like absolutely blown away by the talent. I do like Minter a lot, but I'm not blown away by the corners. I'm not blown away by the pass rush. They lost Puna Ford. They'll probably have a really good draft because Harbaugh should have an upper hand in that regard. But 10.5 is a lot of games when you got to play the Chiefs, an improved Raiders team with Geno Smith, who I think's going over, and you got to play the Broncos, who I also said would go over for about 10 wins. So I think the Chargers reach about 9 or 10 once again. A lot of people will say they'll win 11 or 12 or maybe 13. Right now, based on the roster, I may change my mind in July or August. Right now, based on the roster, I can't say that. I think they win 10, like the Commanders and the Niners. I think they go under. The Detroit Lions, I'm going to go over. I think they're too talented. I'm going to say they win 11 or 12, and I think they win their division. Now, this team could decline because they've lost so many coaches. Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, right, and numerous others. They also, though, get back Aiden Hutchinson, who was arguably the defensive player of the year when he got injured. They get DJ Reed back at a corner position to replace Carlton Davis. They have ascending players like Brian Branch, Jack Campbell on defense. They have still an entire summer to add some veteran free agents to that side of the ball and an entire draft to actually improve a roster that was already one of the best in football last year. They were dominating teams offensively. I think Jared Goff is one of the better NFC quarterbacks. I think they have one of the best offensive lines. I love their weapon group, led by Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta. It's one of the best, most complete all-around units in football. And they can just beat you by running, by out-physicaling you. They can beat you by skill and savvy. And they have a pure identity and culture. So I feel like the Lions have a very good roster. Even if they've lost coaches, I think they win 11 or 12 games. The Cincinnati Bengals, I want to say over desperately, but I'm going to lean towards under. Just because it's a tough division. Their defense is still very bad on paper right now. Their offense is phenomenal. Their offense is going to be a lot of fun. Love Joe Burrow. Love Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I think they win 10. I think they win 10 and they get a wild card spot. But I think their defense is too flawed for them to win 11, 12, 13. Now, that being said, if their defense does improve a little bit, maybe they win 11. So maybe I'm on the wrong side of this. Because I do kind of think they're going to make the playoffs. So if I do believe that, maybe I should go over. See, that's challenging. They've still got Pittsburgh in the division. Cleveland's going to be bad. I'm not sure how good Pittsburgh's going to be. Baltimore, the Bengals do play Baltimore really well. I will say that. Maybe I will go over. Maybe I'll say 11. Maybe I'll go over. It's not my favorite because I don't like their defense at all, but this does feel like a bounce back team. So I'm going to go over with 11 wins. Philadelphia Eagles are now entering the 11.5 over-under teams. There are 4 teams with an 11.5 over-under. 11.5 is interesting because you've got in the back of my mind, it's that NFC East never repeats team where it's like, does this team win 10 or 11, still make the playoffs, but not win their division? At the same time, they're just so talented. It's hard for me to believe they're not going to win 12 or 13 or 14 games. Like this to me feels closer to like Seattle Seahawks 2013, 2014 caliber than it feels like the 22 Eagles to the 23 Eagles. That's what it feels like to me. So I'm going to go with the Eagles winning 12 and going over 11.5. I think they'll still have one of the best defenses. They have still the best offensive line, still the best running back, one of the best wide receiver combos. Sirianni gets this team fired up. I think they win 12 games. They won't be as dominant as last year, but I still think they'll win their division and be one of the top teams in the NFC. The Kansas City Chiefs at 11.5, I would lean under. I think they'll probably win 11. I think they won 11 2 years ago. I would lean under because I think their division is very difficult. I think their schedule is more difficult this year than last year. And they were an extremely fluky team last year. Like, they were extremely fluky. They won so many one-score games, it was ridiculous. They will lose a couple of those. So I think they go like 11-6, and they barely go under. This is bold, stating the Chiefs will go under, because it doesn't happen very often. I mean, you're probably better off betting the over, to be fair. They could go 12-5, 13-4, just based on a better offense, if that's what happens. That's also very possible. This might be a change of a pick, but I'm going to lean under just because based on how last year went, how this offseason has gone, it does feel like the Chiefs, with the Super Bowl hangover, they should probably go under. The Buffalo Bills will go over 11.5. I think out of the contending teams, they have one of the more clear paths to winning their division, which already, when you're talking about winning a division, it's minimum around 11 games won. So I would say they're going to win 12, 13, maybe 14 games, but I would say 12 or 13. They've got arguably the best quarterback in the sport, one of the better offensive lines, one of the deeper receiving crews, which makes you believe they can withstand injuries. They're very balanced on offense. They can run the ball, and their defense should be improved. So I also like that they kept their OC another year. So I think they'll win 12 or 13 and win the AFC East. Pretty simple. The Baltimore Ravens, I think, will also go over 11.5 and win 12 or 13 and win the AFC North. I think they have a debate to get to the Super Bowl this year. I think they will have another draft class that makes this team even deeper and better and stronger, which entering the year, it might be the best team in football, like from a roster standpoint. You're looking at a very solid offensive line, a very good running game, a team that can overpower you or throw the ball on you. You know, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Rashad Bateman, Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith, Matabike, Jones, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Van Noy. They've got a very good team. And they've got Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh, not Jim Harbaugh, a Super Bowl champ. So, yeah, those are my early guesses, picks for the over-unders in 2025. If you enjoyed, spike the like button and don't forget to subscribe. Don't be a jabroni. Peace.